As if losing to the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota for the second straight year wasn't bad enough, now the 49ers are going to be without Deebo Samuel for, quote, a couple of weeks. Just what is this offense going to look like going forward? We'll break it all down on today's Under Review. What is good, everybody? Welcome to Under Review on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Vish Kumaran. Vish, I was all set. We were going to sit down. We're going to talk about the Vikings game. We're going to go through, break it down, and get into the nitty-gritty of what happened. And then Kyle Shanahan had a conference call, and he leads off the conference call by informing everybody that Deebo Samuel strained his calf right at the end of the game against the Vikings. He's going to miss, quote, a couple of weeks with a air quotes calf strain, and I'm putting the air quotes on it, not him. But I just can't help but wonder, Vish, is this a calf, like a real calf, or is this a calf like Christian McCaffrey's calf, which is actually an Achilles?
Yeah, you went straight to exactly what I was thinking of as well. Is there something wrong?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. You made a weird face, so I thought there was something wrong. I immediately thought of the same thing. A couple weeks also when it comes to injuries with the 49ers, it usually means probably a week longer than a couple of weeks. I think this is a tough injury because of how much they've tried to run their offense through Deebo through 2 weeks. I don't know that Deebo has necessarily been producing as well as they might have hoped through 2 weeks, though he's played decently well, reasonably well. Either way, in terms of what you started off this show and the theme of this show, where this offense should go, they got to play more through George Kittle. I think through 2 weeks, George Kittle has been the best weapon on this offense outside of Jordan Mason's running. He's been the best in the pass game. I think he's got to get more opportunities. They got to get back to 4 or 5 years ago when this offense ran through him as the number one option, because I think even with Deebo healthy, without Christian McCaffrey, he is the best offensive weapon on this team.
It's going to get real interesting real fast. And as people in the chat have already pointed out, Modelo Time 1999 on Twitch, shout out to the Twitch fam, says now we see what Purdy is made of. Jay Glimo 001 says time for Purdy to earn his money. That could be JG Limo. I'm not good with reading the names, but YouTube channel member regardless says time for Purdy to earn his money. It's going to be it. You know, everyone that says he's got the Avengers around him, it's easy. You know, he's got Kyle Shanahan scheming guys open. Well, guys have not been getting open as much as we have seen. They've been getting open some. No Christian McCaffrey. Now no Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk says he's at 85%. Trent Williams is clearly not himself. Brock's facing more adversity than he's ever faced. And we're going to see what this offense looks like and if it can still function going forward.
I agree, but I think the take on Purdy when it comes to that is maybe a little bit more nuanced. I think yesterday was maybe a good example of where people were looking for Purdy to produce in a game where the run game really gets shut down in the second half and things are tight and he has to stand into the pocket and make a lot of high-level throws in a game that's going back and forth. And he did make them, but then he also turned the football over in this game, which was like the big difference maker. For example, next week against the Rams, even without Deebo, even without Christian McCaffrey, I could see them exploiting the Rams defense where Jordan Mason is popping off 6 yards a carry the way he did against the Jets. And I feel like when the 49ers offense works like that, it's not about the all-pro weapons. It's not about anything. It's really easy to play quarterback, and it has nothing to do with Purdy being bad because he played quarterback at a high level with that happening versus the Jets. He's a good player. It's more so that Kyle Shanahan, when he gets that working and he sees a weakness in your run defense that he can just keep exploiting in so many different ways, and that's what the Jets game was. It doesn't matter really who the weapons are, who's at quarterback. We saw it in 2017 when this team was the greatest 0-9 team we'd ever seen because they were scoring points with Brian Hoyer and a terrible offensive line. We saw it in 2018 when Nick Mullins was breaking records with Dante Pettis and, all of these people. He was in Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes conversation. I think that's the most important thing. And the scary thing about the Minnesota game is they kind of took that away from the 49ers, and we saw the first glimpses of they are so reliant on Christian McCaffrey to basically marry the run and the pass and give them an advantage where if you play the run, you can't really guard McCaffrey. And if you play the pass, McCaffrey is such a good runner. Mason has been an excellent runner, but he doesn't give them that run pass mixture and versatility that really keeps a defense honest. And so I think that that's really the question mark. And I just am so confident in Shanahan and the way Mason runs it, Rob. I don't think that this situation is going to arise for them for a few weeks. Like, I think they're going to be back to running the football the way they did against the Jets next week against the Rams and for the next couple of weeks.
Here's the problem with that, Vish. They ran the hell out of the ball in the first half. Jordan Mason had 72 carries in the first half. He was averaging 6
yards.
yards per carry, and the 49ers had 7 points at halftime. So it wasn't that they couldn't run the ball. They ran the ball in the first half. In the second half, very, very different story. But in the first half, they ran the ball just fine with Jordan.
And they dominated the time of possession in the first half. And they got right because they got stopped in the fourth down inside the 5-yard line. That was a key scoring position that they got stopped. They got stopped in the opponent's territory inside the inside the opponent's. Were they inside the opponent's territory? Or were they at midfield when they got stopped on that first fourth down?
The first one, they were in Vikings territory.
They were in Vikings territory, another scoring opportunity. They dominated in terms of on the play. Like the second half, the Vikings really outplayed them. But in the first half, they dominated it, and the Vikings defense won moments. They won 2 key fourth downs, and they won moments to essentially have the score be what it was because of a good drive at the end of the half. But really, the 49ers looked very good in the first half despite the score. You're right about that. I cannot argue with that point. But as a team, they played very good football in the first half on offense. They ran the football. They dominated the time of possession. They just weren't converting.
It was extremely frustrating that as far as good as they played on offense in the first half, they only had the 7 points. I loved that Kyle was aggressive. Loved it. Please, more of that, Kyle Shanahan. I thought every time he was aggressive, it was the right call. Now, you want to say that, we can disagree with whether they should have passed it on that, like what the actual play calls were on fourth down. That's fine. But that's separate from whether they should have gone for it. I hope he continues to do that. We'll see if he does. I don't know. Maybe he's less, he might turtle up now with no Deebo. He might think, oh my God, we got to kick field goals.
So do you think that was about no Deebo? So the way I looked at him being aggressive in the first half was about how much he thought points were a premium in this game. Like, I think he came in this game knowing that they were going to have a difficult time against this defense just with how aggressive they are at stopping the run while simultaneously playing like off coverage with vision to the quarterback. So they don't really give up big plays, but they scare you because they're really aggressive at the line of scrimmage. I think he knew, especially also, Rob, we didn't mention this. This is a really important factor in this game. Short week, on the road, early start, difficult thing for a West Coast team to do. Although I wouldn't say the 49ers didn't get up for this game. They had energy early in this game. They came out and competed. They just got outplayed and out executed down the stretch of this game. But that needs to be mentioned. Like, I think he knew that it was going to be difficult for them to score at a certain point. And so when they got in, they had to score touchdowns. And I think that it was more a thing of matchup and who they played in the circumstance. And that brought out his aggression rather than him truly believing philosophically that he needed to be aggressive, if that makes sense. And I don't know if like no Deebo or whatever is going to even change that next week or anything, because I think he really thought this was going to be a difficult game for them to get points. So they needed to score touchdowns when they got down in the red zone and into opponent's territory.
And they had an opportunity. Jennings is open on that fourth down play. The first one, Jennings is open. Brock sees it. That's his first read. He's going there right away. Vikings have a guy who, I don't know, I think was it Van Ginkel or it might've been somebody else. I can't remember, but he didn't get home on the pass rush. He put his hand up. He tipped the ball. That was the end of that. They ran it, or excuse me, they passed it 3 out of the 4 times from the 4-yard line, though. See, and I said after the game, that's where they missed McCaffrey more than anything. It's not between the 20s. They were just fine between the 20s. It was in the red zone. To me, there is no way Kyle Shanahan runs the ball or passes the ball 3 out of 4 times from the 4-yard line if Christian McCaffrey is there. No way in hell.
Yeah, it was weird too because we didn't really get a Deebo carry down there either, which has been their go-to when McCaffrey's out. I feel like Deebo's a guy, I think he scores a touchdown once every 14 or 15 touches in his career. Like, scoring touchdowns is probably the best part of his game. He does it at a really frequent rate for how often or proportionate to how often they give him the ball. And I was surprised they didn't carry the ball down there either. I watched that part of the game kind of in and out. So I'm not 100% sure what else they could have done yet. Maybe I'll have a different opinion by come next week or come 2-3 days from now. But I agree with you. It was surprising that they didn't really run the football, especially inside the 5-yard line. Maybe they didn't feel strongly that they were going to be able to get a push against this defensive line. And they didn't get a push in a lot of different moments in the second half of this game against this defensive line.
Yeah, in the second half, I ran through the numbers today. Jordan Mason had 8 carries in the second half of this football game. 4 of those carries went for 1 yard or less.
Right.
The Vikings completely clamped down the 49ers rushing game in the second half. And I mean, just look at the possessions for the 49ers. Punt, interception, fumble, touchdown, field goal in the second half. That's how it went. And let's be honest, the field goal they got at the end, the Vikings were more than happy to give them because they were up 2 scores. They were letting the 49ers go down the field because time was the Niners' enemy at that point. So it wasn't even like, Brian Flores was keeping his foot on the gas at that point. That was one of their most successful drives. It's just a very, very disturbing game, Vish. And now the Deebo is going to be out for a couple weeks and no Christian McCaffrey there. What is this offense going to be? All of a sudden, we're sitting here like, oh my God, can Ricky Pearsall come back? Like, we need the guy that was shot through the chest to come in and save the offense.
So I don't look at it that way necessarily, Rob. Like, I think this was just a difficult matchup because of how it was going to be to run the ball for them. I think that they're going to be fine in the upcoming weeks when they are able to run the football. But I think the guy they need back is Christian McCaffrey, dude.
Well, no crap, but he can't.
Right? Like, that's the guy they need, obviously. And that's where I feel like people were like, after week 1, like, oh, they don't actually need Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason's this, Jordan Mason's that. That's the opposite take for me on the 49ers offense. Like, they might not need Deebo Samuel. They might not need Brandon Ayuk. They might not need George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey is one of the guys, along with Trent Williams, that he could go to another place, another system, and he would still be a first-team All-Pro because he was that on a terrible Carolina team with the ghost of Cam Newton and Kyle Allen and Sam Darnold and all of that. I don't feel 100% that way about Kit. Well, maybe Kittle would be excellent. I don't know that I feel like Deebo, Ayuk, all of these guys benefit from the system in small different ways, whereas Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams are totally great independent of the system. And yeah, they miss him. He's a great player.
Yeah, but my point is, Vish, he's not coming back for 3 more games at least, and we don't even know that. Kyle said he has no idea when he's coming back. So he's not coming through that door, and now Deebo is out. So I can only deal with the guys that are here. And like Giovanni says, thank you very much, Giovanni. You think Purdy will bounce back? Grant Cohn got me second guessing my thoughts on Purdy. Do you think he's got a point saying he might be Jimmy? No, I don't think he's Jimmy. I think he's, again, like, oh my God, Grant. We don't have to ever talk about Jimmy Garoppolo again. Jimmy Garoppolo is not the bar for a good quarterback with the 49ers. He's not. Like, stop it. Jimmy Garoppolo is gone. He's dead and buried as a 49er. It doesn't matter. Like, Brock has already shown in the limited time that he has that he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. If you watch the games, it's freaking clear.
Yeah, I don't want to do the box score thing, but when has Jimmy Garoppolo ever been 28 of 36 for 319 yards, touchdown, and interception in a game that we probably say that he didn't play his best football? Like, Jimmy Garoppolo being 28 out of 36 for 300 yards in a game is like his best game of his career. I think he threw for 300 yards like 3 times or 4 times on the 49ers. It's not, maybe, don't quote me on that stat, but that's just off the top of my head.
And again, I'm the guy that, everybody wanted to kill because I said I'm waiting to pay Brock Purdy. I'm glad they can't pay him this year. I don't know that he's a franchise guy, and I'm still that guy. But the Jimmy Garoppolo discussion and comparison, like, it just has to stop. It just does. Like, you can be somebody that's not worth $60 million a year and still be much, 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 much better than Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not one or the other.
Well, yes, especially when we now know that he's not even a starting quarterback. He's a lower level backup in this league. He's not even one of the premium backups. He's a lower level backup in the league. And that's where he is now. It says a lot because 2 years ago, people thought they were going to win the Super Bowl with that guy starting. So, he had a broken foot, but besides that, not much has changed. Rob, I just look at the schedule moving forward, though, and I don't necessarily look at either of the Rams, Patriots. Maybe the Cardinals will give them a tough game. That's a tough matchup, but I don't look at either the Rams or the Patriots. The Rams, with their magical coaching staff or magical medical staff, no longer working their magic. It's funny. Aaron Donald goes away, and now people start getting hurt. Weird how that works out, huh?
Wait, what do you mean by that?
I'm just throwing something out there. I don't mean anything by it. It's just weird how, like, they never, like, I used to watch the Rams and be like, wow, Aaron Donald never gets hurt. Jalen Ramsey never gets hurt, blah, 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 blah. And remember, like 3 years ago, we were talking about how the Rams were one of the least uninjured teams. McVay, like, knows how to keep his team healthy. Kyle doesn't, blah, 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 blah. Look at him now.
Yeah, if you're watching on the stream, you could see the list. I mean, Cooper Kupp could go on IR. Puka Nacua is on IR. Tyler Higbee, PUP. Joe Noteboom, IR. Another tackle, IR. Another tackle, IR. They've got another guard on IR. Jonah Jackson could go on IR. Darius Williams, injured reserve. Darian Kendrick, injured. It is insane.
These are all very good players, too, on their team.
But I will say, as long as they have Matthew Stafford, like, I'm picking the Rams to win next week. I'm telling you now, I'm picking the Rams to win next week. No Deebo, no Christian McCaffrey.
They're going silent count at home with a backup offensive line.
Don't care. They got the better quarterback. Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. This 49ers offense, I don't know what it's going to be. I'm picking the Rams next week. I really am.
So I'll take the Niners big next week. I like the matchup versus New England very much the week after at home, and then Arizona at home. Give me that as well. Like, I feel like this is a cushy stretch to, be missing some of their star players. Like, I think these are games where they can run it good enough with Jordan Mason and the defense between how Fred Warner and Nick Bosa are playing, because both of those guys are playing out of their mind through 2
Unreal.
weeks here. They're both playing out of their mind. I think they're going to be totally fine. Like, these issues that we saw last week or yesterday, Rob, I don't want to dismiss them because I think they're all important issues, starting from the safeties, which is something you and I have brought up this offseason. Don't want to toot my horn. Another thing I was right about with the 49ers secondary, Malik Mustafa was the post safety for a lot of yesterday. They benched George Odom and they moved Jair Brown closer to the line of scrimmage. That was something that I expected them to do. And so given that, I just look at those issues. I think we'll see them against the Chiefs. Tampa Bay will be a tough matchup. Green Bay, Buffalo. That's when we're going to really find out whether these issues are going to affect this team. Right now, I think they'll be fine getting through this stretch. They'll be 4-2, 5-1, 6-2, and there'll be something like that going into the middle of the year. I think that's where we're going to see this stretch. And the other issue, I'll kind of just bring it up here, Rob, maybe, is the depth on this defensive line is kind of worrisome to me. Nick Bosa is playing crazy well. He's playing out of his mind. He's a one-man wrecking crew. Who's coming with him? Yetur Gross-Matos, he played well in the preseason. He was good this offseason, and he played well yesterday. Hargrave is playing okay. I don't feel like Hargrave's impacting the game in a way that he feels like a $20 million guy next to Nick Bosa. He's just playing okay to me. And then the rest of these guys, Rob, it's a play here, a play there. It's not consistent enough. This defensive line is also not deep enough. Minnesota didn't possess the ball, but when they did, they played with tempo, and they didn't want to tackle Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler coming downhill wore this team out. I know it was a short week, early start, but still the 49ers defensive line for week 2 got worn out.
It's week 2. I don't want to hear that it's a short week. Like, give me a break, okay? It's week 2. I know it was a short week, but, like, you can't say, like, wow, we're so tired. It's week freaking 2, man. Come on. So I don't want to hear that. I agree. Bosa's out of his mind and Warner's out of his. Fred Warner, like, single-handedly stopped that game from being a blowout.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable when Minnesota gets the ball back, when they're up 10-0 and they got a chance to go down and make it 17. Who intercepts the pass on the Niners' 10-yard line? It's Fred Warner. Now, to be fair, as they pointed out in the broadcast, there was also a safety behind him that looked ready to make the play, but Fred didn't even let it get there, man. He stepped up. He returned it. Actually had a decent return on the interception as well.
And it was an amazing athletic play, too. He climbed the ladder and caught it with his hands.
He had multiple diving pass breakups over the middle of the field, made great plays. We know second straight punch out for him, Aaron Jones, as Aaron Jones is going into the end zone to make it a 26-7 game. He punches the ball out. Isaac Adams, Johnny on the spot. Fred
Twice,
Warner was,
Isaac got him.
yes, because Jacob Cowing decided he forgot how to catch a punt. I loved what I saw from Fred Warner yesterday, and I loved what I heard from him in the post game. Vish, listen to this.
Just, too many my bads, too many, man. I'll try to be better next time, and me included. Like I'm thinking of the plays that I wanted back in this game. Like I said, we got to play more together as a team. We just got to do our job, play smarter football, and the rest will take care of itself because we are talented. We do play hard. We just got to play smarter.
I thought that was very telling by Fred Warner. Now, I don't know if he was talking just specifically about the defense. I tend to think he was, but there were a lot of miscommunication issues in the game yesterday. On the play action touchdown the Vikings had after Purdy's stupid interception, Charvarius Ward and Jair Brown didn't know who to cover, and the guy runs open. On a third down late in the fourth quarter, it was like 3rd and 7, I believe. Vikings are in a bunch formation to the right. 2 Niners defensive backs cover the same guy. They leave Powell open, wide open on the right side. Easy throw for Sam Darnold. They convert again. There was a lot of miscommunication on this defense, which is scary because Bosa sounded the alarm after their game against the Jets. He said, we got away with a lot of stuff. And it turns out the Niners haven't fixed those issues.
No, and it's funny because there was some tweeting out, and a lot of people got mad at me because I corrected a tweet from David Lombardi when he essentially blamed the loss on that 1 cover 0 call last year on Steve Wilks, and they had the same amount of success essentially this year that they had last year. And last year there was no Justin Jefferson, and Kirk Cousins played out of his mind in that game. Sam Darnold played very well yesterday. He did not play as good as Kirk Cousins did a year ago on Monday night. Kirk Cousins was out of his mind in that game. And so Sam Darnold made a few big throws, but I agree. There are some issues with this defense that needs to be cleaned up quickly. I think this idea that they were better at safety, this idea that this corner trio was immediately the best one that the Niners have had, I didn't agree necessarily with those statements. This idea that this defensive line was good enough, I didn't necessarily agree with those statements. And one thing that Minnesota has, let's take Sam Darnold aside, even though he played very well, he made a few pretty outstanding throws. The one to Jefferson was a great throw. The 3rd and 8. Early in the drive that iced the game was a great throw. The 3rd and 2 he converted, getting back over the ball, finding Brandon Powell without Justin Jefferson in the game.
5-yard pass he threw was really
good play. It was a good play. He played well in the game, but let's take him aside. The Vikings had a few things. 1, Kevin O'Connell always stays balanced. They're always balanced with run pass. 2, when their offense gets a rhythm, they take tempo, which means they won't let the 49ers rotate their defensive linemen, which is something we've seen have success against the Niners in the past. And then 3, and I think that this is probably the most important thing, is that they have a good pass protecting offensive line. From Christian Darrisaw across the board, it is a good offensive line, and they protect the passer well, and they kept Darnold clean in that game. We know one thing about Sam Darnold. We know his history. He's talented, but he panics. He freaks out, and it's really easy to rattle him. And the 49ers were unable to really rattle him at all in that game because he wasn't really feeling people around him enough. They were unable to get pressure on the quarterback really effectively. I think those are issues that were there last year when Steve Wilks was coaching, despite the fact that you could probably argue the biggest piece of the game blame pie still needed to go to him because there were scheme errors. And I think those issues are personnel things that, hey, this team is just not as talented or as deep on defense in terms of having 16 athletes that are just supremely gifted and fresh and healthy and big-time hitters and stuff like that than they had in 2021 and 2022. Those were just more talented, more deep defenses.
I don't like this whole – they feel like they're chasing ghosts on defense. We got to get back to playing this and playing that like we did. We got to get back to our style. Just don't worry about trying to live up to some standard that you have in the past. Worry about playing the best defense today with the people that you have. Mooney Ward said after the game, he likes to cover the other team's number 1 wide receiver. Why don't they ever do that, Bish? I
think he's saying that because he's on a contract year. He's 28. This is his last time to get paid.
Okay, but you know what? Can he do it? Can he do it? Yes or no? If you don't think he's good enough to do it, okay. But I'd like to see it. Why not, man? Because what they're doing now is not good enough. And it's not working. And it really hasn't worked the way they want it to for a long time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you give up that 97-yard touchdown, that's a total system breakdown. And I don't know why I said systemic. And I know that a lot of it is going to go on to the safeties, especially because Odom got benched subsequently after the play. So it was like a very easy, let's blame Odom.
Kyle denied that specifically today in his conference call.
Oh,
That
okay.
He claims it was always the plan to work Malik Mustafa in on the third series. I don't know why that would ever be the plan, but to be
Okay. Okay, let's take him at his word. Let's take him at his word because that's great then. If we're not going to blame Odom, he ran a post-corner post off of play action, and I know it was max protection, but it's play action on first down, and the Niners are single high, and the guy is going max protection, 7-step drop, and double hitching before throwing a 60-yard bomb from inside his end zone, and there was nobody near him. We talked about how pressure rattles Sam Darnold. Look at how long he holds this ball. There's nobody near him. He double hitches to throw this ball probably the extent of his arm. He put this ball out there. It's a 60-yard throw. It's a 60-yard throw. It's a great throw. But to me, this was a defensive line issue. They didn't get pressure on the quarterback, and this was kind of the theme of the game. They couldn't get enough pressure to make Sam Darnold rattled, and he made a couple of throws like this, and you got to make the tackle. You can't let him duke you on the angle like this. Jair Brown, you got to chase him down and make the tackle. This is why I think they probably moved Malik Mustafa to the post. Jair Brown isn't necessarily reliable back there at making these kinds of tackles. He takes a couple of bad angles. But, yeah, that was a momentum changer in the game, especially because the Niners were dominating. They had just gone on a 15-play drive. They had, what was it, a 90-yard drive, Rob? The one that got stopped off the tip pass?
It was 15 plays, 88 yards, 9 minutes and 18 seconds.
Yeah, there you go. That's a dominant drive, and you don't score and immediately give up a 97-yard touchdown. That's how you lose a game on the road.
That was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. That was the sequence. It was turnover on downs, touchdown for the Vikings, turnover on downs for the 49ers. That was like the first big sequence of the game. The block punt, I mean, can someone tell Mitch Wishnowsky to touch the guy with the football? Like,
I didn't see the replay. What exactly was in front of him? Because I saw he took a step back and didn't go for it, but was it a case of there was like something that flashed and he didn't dive, or?
No, he's right. The guy, he's right there. He's 2 inches away. If he falls forward, he's going to make contact with the guy in the ground. And instead,
that was 20 yards, right?
It was a significant return. Yeah, I'm not sure what it was off the top of my head, but they definitely gained a lot more yards. And a good job by the 49ers defense to hold them to a field goal. Sam Darnold actually threw a very risky pass on third down in the middle of the end zone that could have been intercepted. But it was a great job by
to throw that one in, huh?
He had, look, like everyone's acting like Sam Darnold had this amazing game. I'm sorry. I don't think
so. Well.
He threw 2 good passes. He didn't lose the game for them. That's it.
He threw more than 2 good passes.
He really didn't. Show me where they are. Tell me where they are. You're giving him credit for a 5-yard pass over the middle of the field.
Yeah, coming back to a second read over the ball with people around him in the pocket.
Yeah, on a third down that they didn't even matter if they picked up, by the way, because they were already well in field goal range at that point.
It still iced the game that much more. Come on, give Sam Darnold some credit. I dislike Sam Darnold as much as you. He played well.
I gave him credit for the good plays that he had. Like that throw to Jefferson, that's a rip, man. He lets that thing go. And part of the reason Jefferson's able to score on it is because Darnold doesn't really flatten the route. He actually throws him up the field on that play, it was a super impressive throw for sure. And the one to Naylor in the fourth quarter at the end where Sam told Mike Silver he knew exactly what coverage the 49ers were in because he saw the same thing in practice. They bluffed like it was man. It was actually zone. And if you watch the replay, he takes 3 steps and lets it rip. Like clearly he was going there. And it was a beautiful throw. And that was the dagger because that put him in field goal range and it converted the first down. And getting in field goal range, I mean, once they make it a 2-score game, it was over at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go overblown either on Sam Darnold. He did play, but he played pretty good. He
really didn't.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, as I said to start the instant reaction show, they won and he won. So Viking fans can say whatever they want because he won. So whether I agree or not is irrelevant, but you have the right to say whatever you want because they won.
I think the Jefferson play, though, is a good example of something that's just missing right now in the Niners offense. And this is where they need something more from the available all-pro players. And you told me about this on the phone as well. And I wish I had the numbers to verify it. I'm just going off of an eye test visual that I had watching that game. The yak was missing from the 49ers weapons. And when I bring up the Jefferson 97-yard touchdown, I'm just bringing up one player that's extremely great, an all-pro player, taking a play that could have been a 40, 50-yard gain and turning it into a 97-yard game-changing touchdown. That's what Deebo Samuel was paid $25 million to do. That's what George Kittle is paid $18 million to do. That's what Brandon Ayuk got his contract to do. That's what Christian McCaffrey has been doing for this offense the last couple of years, right? And I think that's been missing thoroughly from the 49ers offense the last couple of weeks. I think Mason has actually been the one that has gotten the most in the last 2 weeks, plays that, hey, he should have gotten 4 yards and he got 8 yards because he just kept fighting and he broke a couple of tackles and he got a couple more than he should. And that should never be the case with the 49ers offense. That's what they're supposed to be. Now, there were a couple of passes throughout this game where Purdy was just a little bit higher than he usually is, a little bit lower than he usually is. So Deebo had to make some adjustments to catch the football, and that certainly affected yak opportunities. But there were still other situations where outside of George Kittle, I didn't feel like there was anything from a Deebo or Ayuk where the Vikings were scared to tackle them. And I think that's an issue because in other games, it feels like teams are nervous about tackling Deebo because they're nervous about his combination of speed and contact balance and all of that. And it didn't feel like the Vikings had any issues tackling them.
I still feel like Kittle and Mason, like, they break enough tackles. I mean, Mason breaks tackles.
Yeah.
Man. Like, he fits right into like the personality of the team. I would love to see them run the offense through Kittle. You can still continue to use Ayuk as like that complementary piece when you want to. I don't know if we're ever going to see Jacob Cowing and or Ricky Pearsall on the field. I have no idea. I certainly would like to. It's certainly the Niners look a lot better for drafting a couple wide receivers now, don't they? Than they did maybe.
100%. But definitely, I think the thing that we're noticing is that right now, Juwan Jennings is playing very well. George Kittle is playing very well. Deebo Samuel is playing okay. I think they're putting a bigger load on him than he's capable of carrying at this point in his career, if I'm being honest. They're treating him like he's still a number one weapon on this offense. I don't believe he's able to carry that load. That's why with all the target production, he put up stats yesterday, but it felt like he was up and down where you would have a great Deebo play and then a kind of not so good Deebo play. 2-3 years ago, Deebo in a game like this would just be here in terms of his level on every opportunity he gets to make a big play. So when you look at it like that, I feel like they need to be reliant, you're right, on George Kittle and Jordan Mason and Juwan Jennings, who's been mighty reliable and excellent throughout this year. He's looked on it. He's been on time, on rhythm. Brandon Ayuk, the timing, the rhythm, we talked about it, right? Brandon Ayuk is a player the last 2 years that's thrived from being dominant in every single part of the offseason prior to the year. He didn't have an offseason this year, and we're seeing it affect his performance. Because of that, I feel like they need to be more, I guess, going to, and maybe now they will because they're not really going to Ayuk anyway. Deebo got hurt. It's going to run through Kittle, Juszczyk, Jennings, and Jordan Mason.
Why the hell should it run? Should anything run through Kyle Juszczyk? The fact
because
that
he took a pay cut this offseason, Rob.
As Mike Silver loves to remind us every time he mentions his name in an article, maybe we should saint
Rob, he took a pay cut, and
right.
when the weapons come back and talk to Brock, if him or Deebo or Ayuk or Kittle, you know, Trent, like those guys, him and Deebo, they're the same. When they come back and complain to Brock about getting the ball, like, Brock will put him in his place because, you know, like Kyle Juszczyk and Deebo and Ayuk, they all get the same number of targets every year and every game.
Kyle Juszczyk took a pay cut to be still the highest paid fullback in the game. Get the hell out of here. Like,
by the way, highest paid fullback with a free all-pro every single year because he's the only fullback anyone knows, and a free mention from the media because he was the big signing of this first big signing of this regime. So they always need to mention how important a guy who plays 30% of the time is.
Right. And he never saw a microphone he didn't like. He's always willing to talk to the media, and he's very personable when you talk to him. So that's a good combination for him. Every Kyle Juszczyk target.
He's going to be like like I'm gonna do a video on this at some point, but like if you've noticed over time, when there's like a great coach in a place like a Belichick, everybody around there ends up getting their career just elevated totally. And people just look at the coaches around them, but it's the players, it's the media people, all of that. Like, how many Boston reporters went national because they covered the early parts of the Patriots dynasty? Same thing in Philly with the Andy Reid, right? Like Daniel Jeremiah and Louis Riddick, all the guys associated with Howie Roseman and worked in Philly 19, 20 years ago, all have jobs in the media and they're the ones hyping each other up. We're seeing a similar thing with Shanahan in San Francisco with all these media people getting blown up. They're getting national opportunities. That's all because of Shanahan and what he's created and the buzz, and all because of that. I think that that's what's playing the biggest role. And I think Kyle Juszczyk is going to be one of those big beneficiaries where 3-4 years from now, ESPN, Greeny is going to be kicking it. He's going to be, Kyle Juszczyk, I'm going to come to you now. Tell me, what happened to the 49ers on Sunday night? Tell me. They did not look very good.
He'll say, we got to get back to playing 49er football. What they really need is their starting quarterback to get hurt, and then they could say that the backup makes them better now. That'll be Juice's big takeaway.
Randy Galella with Dan O. Adding a fullback to that segment. I mean, Heath Evans is the only fullback I've ever seen on TV, so he'll be breaking a lot of firsts.
True. Randy Galella, YouTube channel member, says Rob treats Darnold like others treats Brock, judging him on the past instead of now. Practice what you preach. First of all,
Brock Purdy, get him, Randy. Get him, Randy.
Brock Purdy has no past. He's been a starter for a little over a year. Sam Darnold has multiple seasons of hideous play, so they are not the same thing. Brock Purdy has never been as bad as Sam Darnold was, and I'm not judging Sam Darnold by the past. I'm judging him by what I saw on Monday. To me, he made 2 good throws in the game. I thought Kevin O'Connell did an awesome job of making life easy for Sam Darnold. And it's a credit to Kevin O'Connell, and it's a disgrace that the 49ers could not find a way to get enough pressure on Sam to make him self-destruct. As it was, he had an interception. He had a hideous fumble where he just threw the ball in the backfield because the Vikings had 2 guys in
motion. Went Jimmy Garoppolo. There were a couple of hideous plays in this game because the Brock Purdy fumble from a clean pocket into Jihad Ward was pretty ugly too.
That was
by the way, I messed up. I said Louis. I meant Louis Riddick, of course. I don't know why I said Louis. Same, not the same thing. Louis flows, but it's Louis. But the 2 turnovers from Brock in this game were pretty alarming, hideous. And I would say he took a couple of pretty bad sacks. The first one he took, he got spooked in a clean pocket because the first 3 third downs in this game, they put 6 on the line of scrimmage. And I think the Niners were expecting the usual cover 0 defense that the Vikings played. And they spinned out and played a very soft 2 high shell for rushing 4. And it kind of, I think Brock saw a little bit of phantom pressure. Then they started rushing 5 off of that in the second half. They had a very complicated game plan. And I think Brock is still a young quarterback, and for all the things people say about his maturity, he's only played so many games in the NFL, and I think this was a game where we saw a couple of young quarterback mistakes, which is rare from him, but he took a couple of stupid sacks. He made a couple of stupid errors.
Here's the thing that is a little disconcerting for me is this is not his first time seeing Brian Flores. He just saw this defense last year, and he did not play well in that game last year. And by the way, can we just stop with all the Brock only threw those interceptions because he had a concussion? I think we saw last night he threw the interceptions because he didn't know what he was looking at a lot of the time. Brian Flores did an excellent job of muddying the waters for Brock Purdy, and I think a lot of the times he wasn't quite sure what to do. He didn't have some of the time to throw that he on some of the plays. And so he would want to just check it down, except he wasn't checking it down to Christian McCaffrey. He was checking it down to Kyle freaking Juszczyk.
I think that's part of it. I think it just took him. What Brian Flores did was he made Brock hold it a step longer. And I think one of Brock Purdy's greatest traits is we saw in the Jets game, when the game is opened up that way and the scheme is working, he plays so fast. Like his back foot hits the ground. He knows where he's going. The ball's out. Like he's playing quarterback so fast. And Brian Flores really slowed him down where he made him second guess himself. He made him think. He made him have to, do I need to move? Is there pressure on me? Oh, he put 6 in front of me. Now he's only rushing 4. They're kind of close to me, but they're not. I think that those were just young quarterback situations for Brock Purdy. And while I agree, like he's seen Brian Flores before, I think Brian Flores is now giving Kyle Shanahan trouble 3 different times. The Brian Allen game, in 2020. Obviously, that game is remembered for Brian Allen, but the Dolphins defense put a number on Jimmy Garoppolo returning from his sprained ankle, whatever situation. He was awful in that game, and the Dolphins defense gave them trouble. Then they didn't give them trouble last year because they didn't really punt, but they stopped them probably better than a team with their talent disadvantage compared to the 49ers offense should have done on that Monday night game. And then yesterday, I thought they did an amazing job in the second half. The Niners offense played awesome, I thought, in the first half. Besides converting key opportunities, which is obviously the biggest part, like they really played well on offense. They ran the ball. There was a flow. There was a rhythm. Brock was playing pretty good. He missed a couple of throws, but he was still playing pretty good. The second half just got rough for them, and it got rough fast because of a couple of turnovers, their inability to run the football the same. They were getting themselves into these 3rd and long situations, and it was just a tricky game at that point, especially when the score started running away from them a little bit.
They never were able to tilt the game in their favor, which is obviously makes a huge difference for this team. Maynard Keenan.
Hey, let me ask you this. In terms of tilting the game, I felt like they were missing a momentum-changing play. Do you put that on Shanahan? Do you put that on these all-pro players? Do you put that on Brock? Because I kind of look at it as, hey, where was that Deebo moment where you can change a game by making a play that shouldn't happen, steal one back? Where was a Kittle moment of doing that? Where was that Brandon Ayuk moment of doing that?
They had big plays, though. Deebo had a 28-yard play. Kittle had a 25-yard play. Ayuk had a 22-yard play. Jennings had a 25-yard play. They had explosive plays. They just didn't capitalize in the key moments. They converted 1 third down in the first half and 1 third down in the second half. That ain't going to do it. You can't have drives where you go down the field avoiding 3rd down altogether. Like, that's just not going to happen on the regular, even though Kyle Shanahan sometimes makes that happen more than both teams. But you got to be able to convert on 3rd down, and they did not do it. And it wasn't like, in my head, I went back and I was like, I felt like they were behind the sticks all night. They really weren't. In the first half, their longest 3rd down they faced was 3rd and 14. Other than that, it was 3 yards, 3 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards. Like,
he took a sack on 3rd and 14 too, right?
I don't remember what the specific outcome of that play was. But like, my point is, like, it wasn't like in the Super Bowl and it was 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10 every time. These were 3rd and manageable in the first half. In the second half, not so much. 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 10, and they had 1 3rd and 1. Their average yards to go in the second half on 3rd down was 9.5. In the first half, their average yards to go on 3rd down was 6. That's manageable for anybody. So it wasn't even well, they got put in a bad situation. They just could not execute on the money downs.
Agreed. And I think actually the 3rd and 14 was the one he threw to Jennings, right? The big throw to Jennings.
It might have been.
Yeah, I think that was the one in the first half. But either way, I 100% agree with you. And that's what the game came down to. I guess where I feel like people get frustrated is I think we have this conversation not as much last year, but in years past with this football team, it's been 4 or 5 times where it's like, even circumstances against them or not, they're talented enough, they play well enough where they should win these games. And it's almost like they beat themselves rather than getting beat. Like, Minnesota did good things in this game, but the 49ers just hurt themselves at every pivotal moment that they could bring the game back within. And Minnesota gave them chances. Like, after that really stupid play to Jihad Ward, the game should have been over, and Fred Warner saved their butts by forcing the fumble on Aaron Jones on a play he looked like he was going to score. They came back and scored, but it was like every key moment they needed on defense, on the alternative, they couldn't get a stop. Like, when they needed to get a stop on defense, they couldn't do that either, and that was very tough. And I think that came down to the fact that they can no longer close games with this defensive line.
Right,
like, getting the ball back, they had 4 third downs on that drive. This is Sam Darnold. He played well, no doubt about it. But this is not Patrick Mahomes. Like, you should have been able to get one where you get pressure on him, rattle him, and get the ball back to your quarterback and give him a shot to drive down the field. And this was the name of the game for them like 5, 6, 7 years ago when Cassius Marsh was rushing the passer. That's why they would struggle to win close games, because they couldn't rush the passer. It's not that, obviously. They have Nick Bosa. They have Yetur Gross-Matos. It's never that bad. But compared to 2023 and 22 when Arden Key was there and Charles Omenihu was there and Samson Ebukam was there, they're missing something right now. And By the way, there was one play I pointed out that you and I had different reactions to. I would love to see what our audience's reaction was. Early in this game, Sam Darnold had a run on a third down where he straight up just runs away from Leonard Floyd. I know Darnold's a good athlete, better athlete than expected, always said about him, but I thought Floyd kind of looked slow. And one of the key hallmarks of Leonard Floyd's game in his prime, one of the reasons why he got a lot of sacks, is he's very athletic and he runs down the quarterback when you push them off their spot. That's why he got so many sacks playing with Aaron Donald, because Aaron Donald would get the quarterback to move off their spot, and Floyd is good at disengaging and finishing plays. And Darnold ran away from him like him and Floyd weren't in the same stratosphere in terms of speed. Like he accelerated a good 10 yards away from him. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that Sam Darnold is a good athlete. He's fast. Sam Darnold's 27. He's still, he's in the prime physically of his career. He's entering the prime of his career, really. So I wasn't really discouraged by that. Like I expected him to do that. And maybe I'm overvaluing Sam Darnold's speed, but
that would be the first time you're overvaluing anything of Sam Darnold's.
I think I'm fair to Sam Darnold. I really do. I don't think I'm unfair. I compliment him on some good plays. I've complimented him on some of the throws that he did make. And as a runner, he's really good, actually. He had like a 50-yard touchdown run against the Broncos a couple years ago. Do you remember that one?
I do.
What the hell? It was a crazy.
He had a couple of good runs yesterday too, on a really long third down where he almost wouldn't have run if he didn't accidentally step through the close his eyes, step through the pocket, and he looks up and he's like, holy cow, I can run.
There was nobody. I saw that play. Let me see if I can find it on Twitter. I saw the play from the end zone view from behind Sam Darnold, and because the Niners are in man coverage, like there is literally nobody. It was unbelievable. And he took off and I think he gained like 20 yards. And he did the smart thing, unlike Dak Prescott, who ran for every yard he could get a couple of years ago in the playoff game and cost the Cowboys the end of the game because they didn't have time to spike the ball. Darnold slowed up and intentionally gave yards back because he knew that time was a factor, and he slid and they were able to stop the clock and get the field goal. So that was a good play by Darnold as well.
Wow, I want to get three good plays, Sam Darnold.
I want to get this super chat. Maynard Keenan says, what if the front office wants justification for paying Juice and Deebo? And Kyle says, I'll show you why I need them, and it's blowing up in his face. I don't think that Kyle would call plays like that just to try and prove a point. But I think for some reason, he thinks Juice is way more valuable or way better than he is. And I think the reason is they're buddies, frankly. I think JT O'Sullivan is right when he calls Kyle Juszczyk coach's buddy. They don't need Kyle Juszczyk, and they use him way too much, or at least they did last week. Way too much.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not as bothered as you when it comes to the Juszczyk thing. I do agree. I think some of it is just clever marketing. Like they paid him a lot of money early in this regime, and it was about him being like a tone setter and all of that. And I think selling him that way and continuously selling him that way portrays like a good like cultural continuance for this regime, because he's one of those people that they use to kind of integrate whatever culture that they have, and it's been a very successful one. I don't think it has anything to do with the money when it comes to Deebo. I think that there's just a load on Deebo Samuel now that he, for whatever reason, and maybe this changes when he comes back from his injury, but through 2 weeks, I felt like he is not capable of carrying the load that they want him to carry. They want Deebo Samuel to be the guy he was in 2021, where he carries this load and he is an all-pro, one of the best players in the NFL, and he might not be the best individual receiver, may not be the best individual running back, but he is one of those players that like scares everybody. And I don't feel like Deebo is scaring anybody the way he used to. I know he looks in great shape. I know he's still a very good player. He still makes a few athletic, incredible catches. He still runs hard after the catch. But there was a specialness to him 2-3 years ago, ability to make something out of nothing that we see in glimpses like during the Eagles game, but we just don't see it the same consistency. And it's been hidden the last couple of years between his contract, his injuries, but also because Christian McCaffrey has been producing that. And without Christian McCaffrey being there, they're putting that expectation for Deebo to be that guy. And I don't think he's capable of carrying that load. I don't know if you have a different take, Rob, but Deebo is not that guy that can be a number one option at the level that McCaffrey was or at the level he was a few years ago. I think Kittle can, by the way. I think Kittle still got it. I think if they go to Kittle more and they keep relying on him, I don't know how long he stays healthy, but I think Kittle can totally still be a guy that he was 3-4 years ago.
I've never thought that Deebo is reliable. This was supposed to be the best Deebo Samuel we've ever seen, right? The most in shape Deebo Samuel. He's slimmed down, this, that, and the other thing. He's hurt. It's week 2. He couldn't make it 2 full games without getting hurt. So to me, he's just unreliable in that way. Andre, YouTube channel member, says Nick Bosa never disrupts plays. He's paid a ton of money to make splash plays, especially in close games late. You don't see Bosa doing what TJ Watt does. He gets mostly coverage sacks. First of all, TJ Watt's better than Nick Bosa. TJ Watt is unreal how whenever the Steelers need a play, he freaking makes it.
Or whenever the Steelers need a play, somebody screws up a motion and the snap gets deflected and the ball bounces and somehow he's always there to just fall on it. There.
He's insane. He had a couple plays in week 1. Like he had one play where he disrupted the play and they called him offsides. He wasn't offsides. He just did such a damn good job of anticipating the snap count. He's on another level to me. Nick Bosa is not on that level, but Nick Bosa is incredibly good. If you don't think Nick Bosa disrupts plays, I feel like we're watching different games, to be honest with you. He does disrupt plays. It's everybody else that's not doing their part. Nick Bosa can't get a sack every time.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're just not as good around him as people want to admit. And I think that wasn't given enough attention this offseason. It wasn't covered enough. They're not as good around him. Dude, in years past, I've said this. It's not like the end of the roster defensive linemen in 21 or 22 were guys that you would just write home about. But in years past, we would talk about 12 to 14 defensive linemen through the offseason, and they would keep 10. And we would be like, yeah, they could have kept 12. There were 12 guys that could have made this team. This year, they kept 8. And did we feel like all 8 were capable of making this team? Does anybody think Robert Beal, if he's not a 5th-round pick, is a contributor?
Yeah.
There were 7 guys capable of making this team, of which Jordan Elliott is a role-specific player, though he plays the run well. So that's 6 guys as a part of your pass rush rotation. And of those 6 guys, who's an impact player other than Bosa? Yetur Gross-Matos. That's it.
I thought Javon Hargrave played very well yesterday.
I feel like he played well, but he's not playing well enough to be the number 2 guy that makes $20 million on a defensive line, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lopsided impact between him and Bosa, and I don't think it should be that. I think he could carry a bigger load. But I agree. If I'm going off of my standard that Gross-Matos played well, then Hargrave also played very well. Better, yeah.
There was one play where the Vikings ran play action, and Hargrave was in the backfield so fast. If they had handed it off, he would have possibly disrupted the handoff. That's how fast the backfield. I think Gross-Matos came, and that's when Darnold got the intentional grounding. Which, by the way, who's arguing? They were trying to make the case in the broadcast. Well, there was a receiver right there.
Yeah, it was a weird broadcast, man.
What?
Kevin Arlen actually annoyed me yesterday. I'm not going to lie. Maybe it's because the Niners were losing and he's so excited about the other team. But
I like Harlan, so I liked his style. But
I always liked him. But yesterday he was annoying me.
I loved when they went to the scoring update and with Burleson, and Burleson's like, I can't hear. And so he doesn't say anything, and they're showing the highlight. And they go back to Harlan, and he starts announcing the highlight from the other game. Like,
he's
awesome,
funny.
man.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, when your team is not making the big plays and he's getting pumped up about everybody else, it's frustrating because you want him to get pumped up about your team. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Nothing good happened for the 49ers in Minnesota.
Should they have kept Chase Young?
I don't know. I don't like guys where I have to question their effort. Even if you're not good, I'd rather have a guy that's not good that plays hard rather than a guy that could be good if he played hard but kind of half-asses it. I can't. It was the NFC Championship game, and we're like, Chase Young is not playing hard. Like, the defensive coordinator had to call them out in the freaking conference title game. What are we doing in a contract year for Chase Young?
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's fair. I was just throwing that out there. I think what this shows, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, they missed the Trey Lance pick, all of that. The Drake Jackson pick being a total flop hurts them here.
Right, because he's supposed to be part of the reinforcements, right?
Yep.
He's supposed to be part of the next wave, so to speak, of players, and he's second round pick.
And Kinlaw, by the way. Because when you sign Eric Armstead to the big contract and you draft Kinlaw and you let Buckner walk, the idea is that Kinlaw eventually replaces Armstead in that like high threshold, high paid defensive tackle spot. Like
Yep.
rotationally, that's what your idea is. Of course, things don't go to plan like that in the NFL, but essentially getting nothing from those two high pick investments from like a long term standpoint has really affected this defensive line rotation. And in fact, I think plunging that big on Hargrave, and I was a fan of it. I was a fan of Hargrave. So, like, I obviously was just as wrong as anybody else. So I can't criticize it from a place of, haha, I was right, you were wrong. It's more so like looking back, yeah, it was too much money for him.
It did not work out. Like, that is inescapable. I thought it was hilarious that the Jets people were saying, oh, the Jets, they really feel like they got something in Javon Kinlaw. And then the 49ers went out and shoved it down their throat. It's like, yeah, guess what? You don't have anything with Javon Kinlaw. It's not happening. We know what that is. Trust me. There's nothing there. And so, yeah, that hurts too. It all goes into the stew. And so now they sit. They're 1-1. Going into week 3, a very, very injured Rams team, a
Very favorable schedule coming up.
very injured 49ers team. Look, you win next week. Like, I saw people on Twitter saying, well, the 49ers have to dominate these next couple of games because then that'll show that we can stop these concerns. Forget that. Forget style points. Survive and advance. Whether you beat a team by 1 point or 100, you only get one win in the standings. I don't care how they do it. Just win enough games to get to the playoffs, and hopefully they can get their group healthy enough to make a playoff run. That's all this season is about in the regular season.
100% agree. And in fact, I feel like the Niners the last like year and a half have become too reliant on needing to blow teams out. Like winning survival games is good in the NFL. The Chiefs, all they won last year was just survive games. You learn how to win close games in different ways. You learn who you can rely upon, who you can't rely upon. You learn what things you can rely upon. Can we run it in close games? Can we stop the run in close games? All of those things you learn. So I agree. And I think it would have been cool to see them get a stop. Like yesterday was a great opportunity on the road. Get your quarterback the ball back once, give him one shot, see what happens. And they couldn't do that. And they couldn't stop the run yesterday. I don't think there was enough credit given to when they went tempo with Ty Chandler. The Niners had no answer for Ty Chandler coming downhill.
Yeah, they did a good job against Aaron Jones. They did not do as good a job against Ty Chandler. He was able to break contain a couple of times and get around the edge for a couple of big gains, which was, it's weird because like I was watching Aaron Jones and I was like, hey, this Niners run defense, second straight week is pretty good. And then I checked the box score and I'm like, wait a minute, Chandler's got like 7 carries for 70 yards.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. He ended up with
they ran the ball great. I think they ran it for like 140 or 150 yards. I wish I had looked up all the stats before I came.
Darnold had 32. Darnold had 32 of those, which they still count as rushing yards, obviously. But like, I don't look at those as like a failure of the run.
Got you. Yeah,
it's like Darnold scrambling around and making plays with his legs, which good on him for doing it. But the Chandler thing, yeah, I mean, 8.2 yards per carry. They burned him. What really hurt the 49ers, though, they could have survived all of that if they could have run the ball in the second half, and they just couldn't. So if it was like incompletion on first down, then run the ball on second down and gain like 1 yard or 0 yards or lose yards, now you're screwed. You're in third down, and that's trouble on the road against Brian Flores. That's why the 49ers offense didn't look as good in the second half, Franco.
And it was weird because like I thought Minnesota actually, even though the Niners dominated the clock in the first half, getting the field goal at the end of the half was like huge for Minnesota. They were going to double dip, but the Niners defense was firing on that first drive and they get the ball back right away. And I think the first play of the second half for the Niners was a 10-yard run to Jordan Mason. So I was like, oh, here we go. Here come the Niners.
Yep.
And then immediately after that, I think he got sacked on the subsequent play. Then they tried running it with Mason and he got stuffed. And then he got sacked on the third down. And then it was like, oh, and it felt like they could never get their momentum back on offense from there on until the end when Minnesota was kind of playing soft and kind of letting the Niners get the clock back. Then their offense started rhythmically accumulating again. And I guess there was a portion after the Aaron Jones fumble where they're offense had some flow and rhythm too. But even then, Minnesota was playing against the clock a little bit as well, because that was in the fourth quarter and they had a lead. I think a 2-score lead. I want to say it was 20-7 then.
Yeah, it was 20-7. First play of the second half is a 9-yard run to Mason for the Niners. Then Purdy hits Juice for 8 yards. That was a play where he extended it and hit Juice along the sideline. So then it's 1st and 10, and Brock gets sacked for 0 yards, but like it's still 0 yards. So now you're 2nd and 10. Jordan Mason actually loses 2 yards on 2nd and 10 because, of course, when the 49ers don't gain any yards on first down, everybody and their mother knows they're going to run the ball on 2nd down. That's exactly what happened. They stuff him. Then it's 3rd and 12. Purdy gets sacked, and we're punting away. Ugh. And that summarizes the day for the 49ers. So frustrating to say the least, but they're only 1-1. The good news, the Lions lost as well. A lot of the Rams obviously got blown out by the
Mayfield is. Whoo!
So, a lot of the teams that we considered contenders, the Cowboys got their doors blown off by the Saints in Dallas. So maybe
Derek Carr.
Maybe this loss looking back is not as damning as it might have been. And we'll see if they can get right going forward. Whatever happens, we will be here with you at the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the bell to get notified every single time we go live, which is every single weekday, plus after every single 49ers game. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Vish Kumaran YouTube channel as well if you want to be a better, smarter fan. Vish, I won't talk to you until after the Rams game. Are you taking the Rams or are you taking the Niners?
Oh, I think the 49ers beat them pretty badly.
I don't like what is happening with this offense.
Jordan, I think Jordan Mason's going to have a huge game.
He's going to have to, because with no Deebo now and no Christian McCaffrey, it's going to look different for the 49ers on offense. We'll see if different equals better or if different equals worse. But regardless, thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of Monday Night Football, which looks like a terrible game, but enjoy it nonetheless. And we'll talk to you next week.